Hello, friends and neighbors. Welcome in the light, where laughter's the answer and hearts are shining bright. With calloused hands and wits, so raise your sharp. Let's praise a place where love ignites the spark. In the field of dreams, where sweat and hope combine, we'll raise our voices high and toast to the divine. Be your best and let your spirit always rise. Give thanks for every moment under sunny skies. Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life. Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life.
Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to Sunnyside. Well, it's great to have you with us. Man, what a week it's been since I last had the opportunity to visit with you here at the porch out on Sunnyside Farms. And we look at the things that I did this week. I want to tell you about. Pretty proud of the fact that on Friday, when it was 85 degrees, and now we have snow on the ground. Well, there you go. That's Iowa. We had, we being the Gridiron Club group that I'm a part of, in support of Waldorf University football. We decided last fall that because of the emerald ash borer devastation to the ash trees that surround the football field, which is Bullsdorf Field in Forest City, that those trees needed to be removed. And so I've told you before, we got our volunteers together, and at the end of the season, we cut down those 40 trees that were left out of 60 and removed them. And then Waldorf University ground the stumps out over the winter, and then now on Friday, we planted 40 brand new ginkgo biloba trees around Bullsdorf Field. It's pretty cool. Put 11 on the north end and 11 on the south end and 18 along the east end. And it's kind of cool because it's 11 on 11, right? Just like the game of football calls for. So we think that they're going to do very well. They're going to look great. They should turn gold. Ginkgo are kind of interesting trees. They don't always turn color. When they do, they turn gold. It's beautiful. And then they drop all their leaves at one time, which is kind of a weird little factor. And that's why if they don't turn yellow, it's probably because frost came early. And then when that first frost comes and then it warms up again to say 60 degrees, that's just a signal to the trees. And then they just drop all of their leaves. They release them. And so it's kind of cool to see them all flutter on down. So sometimes they're green, sometimes they're yellow, but overall, beautiful trees. They're going to grow as tall as the mature ashes would have grown. They're pretty hard to kill, and so we're excited about that and hopeful as well as we had a group of volunteers out there once again helping us plant all of those trees. And folks, we planted 40 trees in just over 2 hours and did a great job and had it all laid out. Sometimes people would stop by and they would ask, what are you planting? I guess one of the old retired maintenance guys from Waldorf University stopped by and talked to past president Courtney Woogie. And of course, we get asked this all the time. What kind of trees you planting there? And after you've heard it enough times, you start having fun with people. And Courtney said, yeah, we're planting ash trees. We're planting these are supposed to be not susceptible to the bug. And he just kept that going, and the guy was kind of furious. He was like, well, I can't believe that's stupid. So we did have fun, and we got it done. And then it rained on Saturday, and then it snowed on Sunday. So what can you do? And that's welcome to Iowa. These are the new trees, and that's just an effort that if you get the people together. They see a common cause. You set a schedule. You set an amount that you need to raise. We raised over $20,000, and we're able to get this all done. And so it'll be this fall. They'll be ready, and they're out there. And they're not small trees either. I mean, they came in. They're pretty big. They're probably 10, 12 feet tall when they're planted in the ground. So we got the biggest trees that we could get that we were able to plant around the football field there. And it's just another way to beautify the community, support the university, my alma mater, the program for the football team, and in general, just beautifying the community, like we said. So very, very, very happy that was able to be done on a beautiful day on Friday when we had 85-degree temps. And then, like I said, the weather changed like it did over the weekend. But that didn't matter because the other thing that happened, I got to tell you about, I've mentioned it before, the 50s Revival Show, sponsored by Vinyl Fest. My friend Donovan Johnson, who's been on the show, I think he's on the very first episode of The Sunny Side of Life a couple of years ago. Donovan has put together this series of revival shows for rock and roll and certain country songs for the 50s, and we did that on Sunday. He's also doing one for the 60s, and then I think he's got 70s and 80s. Who knows how far this will go? And he invited me to be a part of that show, which was a little daunting because, look, I don't mind the sound of my voice when I'm talking in this format. On as an announcer or as a podcast host, and I do sing in the church choir, and I used to sing when I was in high school in a quartet. I think you might have heard that episode when we talked to Ben Anderson a year or so ago. We were in a quartet back in the day, but I don't really love the sound of my singing voice. I had 3 songs that Don had given me to solo. And they were the Big Bopper singing Chantilly Lace, which we'll come back to in a second. Hit the Road Jack, which was Ray Charles' classic. And that was an easy song because, he doesn't really sing that much. It's mostly the ladies that sing that song. But that was a lot of fun. And then he also set me up with a song that I'd never heard before. And that was called The Ballad of Thunder Road that Robert Mitchum actually recorded. And so I spent a lot of time really trying to get those lyrics down. It's a lot of lyrics. It's very fast. Anyway, that song got cut for time. And I was so relieved because even though I'd spent a lot of time really trying to get those lyrics right, I was nervous because if you mess up one bit of lyrics, then all of a sudden you're already 2, 3, 4 measures down, and you try to get caught up, and it just doesn't work. So I was a weaker element on that one. And when Don texted me Saturday morning and said, "Hey, we're going to cut this from the show," I was like relieved. So if you went to the show on Sunday afternoon, matinee performance at 3 p.m. It was the matinee and the only performance at the Bowman Fine Arts Center. Lots of people showed up. It was a really good crowd and a great band, great singers across the board. We sang, I think, 30 songs. It was just under 2 hours for a performance, and it went really well. And I was pretty excited to be able to try to replicate the Big Bopper and sing his classic song, right, Chantilly Lace. And so there's a little theater involved with that. And so it sounded a little bit, like this.
Baby! Yeah, this is Big Bopper speaking.
And we'll just cut it off right there. You get it. So I can sing. It was a lot of fun. And you could hear the crowd. They really got into that when I said, "Hello, baby." And people were up on their feet. They had a good time. And so anyway, thanks for those of you who listened to the show and came out. Like I said, it was a good crowd. And we're going to do it again. Not the 50s. We're going to move into the 60s. I have no idea what the songs are going to be. Don picks all of those out. And I did get invited back. So I am interested. Maybe there'll be some Tom Jones in the future for the 60s revival show. I think that's going to happen in June. We'll see. So stay tuned for that. Just a way to perform in a different capacity with a group of talented musicians and singers in the community and bring quality concert type experiences to the small town Iowa. And so I don't think it's going on the road. We're not taking it on the road by any means, but it sure was a lot of fun, for sure. And looking forward to the next one, and we'll see how far it goes. I don't know what the future holds, but Donovan's doing a great job with the Vinyl Fest production, and like I said, just wrapped the 50s revival show, and that was a lot of fun. And so, stay tuned for that. Maybe we'll keep you in the loop as we get closer to the next show. Like I said, I think that's going to happen in June. He's got it all laid out. I don't have all the details yet, but I was happy to see that he did invite me back, so I must not have done too bad of a job. Now, what we're going to talk about this week is some things that have just kind of gotten under, not necessarily getting under my skin a little bit. I'm not an economist, right? But I understand economy, I think, fairly well. And there are a few people that I really rely on when it comes to economic principles. And, primarily I'd say that you can't get much better than listening to the advice of Thomas Sowell, who is really just an amazing human being and has just prolifically provided works of great scale and significance regarding our economy and our practices, and primarily has always kind of come down on the idea that, like, the more government tries to help in the economy, the worse the economy gets. And they actually, the government, I'm here from the government. I'm here to help. Yeah, right. And so one of the things that's happening since Trump got elected, and I like Donald Trump. I like him. I like a lot of the things about him. But there are some things that I'm not particularly keen on, and one of which is the tariffs. The tariff program that Trump has in his brain, that in some weird McKinley-esque attempt to bring in revenue to the United States government, which tariffs do that, but they are generally, I would say, just a bad idea. Tariffs are not helpful. He's using them in a variety of ways. Make America great again, put America first, put us on top of the economy worldwide, make sure that the dollar is the benchmark that everyone uses across the world, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things are, that's what you want. And then you do want to balance out some of our trade situations with other countries. Our products do go to other countries, and they put some fairly extreme tariffs on us. And then so we reciprocate, and we are putting tariffs on other countries now. However, economically, it's just a mixed bag of results, and I would say not a good mixed bag of results. And I said I'm not an economist, but Thomas Sowell is. And he's got some things to say about that. So that's what we're going to get into today. Talk about tariffs, the Trump tariffs, and why it's a bad idea. So just knock it off. I don't like the tariffs. If you're a big, MAGA Trump Republican supporter, whatever it happens to be, nothing that Trump can do is wrong. Obviously, that's not a good way to look at it. Tariffs hurt you and I. At the end of the day, tariffs are just a tax on the consumer. That's how it works. And if the government comes in and says, we're going to put X amount of a percent or whatever as a tariff onto this product, it's not like the companies then just eat that cost. They will raise their prices. It raises the price of everything. And there are downstream effects to having tariffs on one particular thing. And those downstream effects are interesting. We'll get into that a little bit more with some cuts from the Wall Street Journal and so forth. But I want you to know that I agree that we want to balance our trade. Like, we do want to be able to balance our trade with the world, and that China is aggressive, and they are also nefarious in some ways, and not all of the things that Canada has been doing to the United States is great economically, and same thing with Mexico and these other countries. And Trump has shown that he can kind of pistol whip smaller economy nations into doing his bidding by threats of tariffs. And so if you have tariffs for punishment to try to get a country in line, that's one technique. But then they shouldn't be very, the threat, if that's enough, as it has been so far in the administration in some cases, that can be useful, but it doesn't necessarily make relations any better. And then you can also be retaliatory. It's like, you have tariffs on our stuff, so we're going to put tariffs on your stuff in hopes that you will then, see the light of day and reduce your nation's tariffs so that we'll reduce our nation's tariffs. And that creates a trade war, and so on and so forth. So tariffs have been around for a long time. They predate when we had a income tax, a federal income tax, which I'd be happy if we didn't have a federal income tax. We have like almost $5 trillion that we collect as a federal government in income taxes. And tariffs under the new Trump plan would be, about 5% of that, or $500 billion. And so that's not particularly significant. But we're being led to believe by the Trump administration that this then is going to result in tax cuts on our federal income tax, which may be the case because it's 2025, and the Trump tax cuts that he initiated in his first administration were set to sunset in 2025. And obviously, it's very important to keep to the Trump administration to keep those tax cuts in place, which on income, I don't mind that. I think that's just fine. And there's all these things that are happening through Doge and finding all of this fraud, waste, and abuse, which is tremendous. And it's across the board. It's in every single department of the federal government. There is so much waste as we're continuing to find out. It really is mind-boggling, and it's frustrating. And it's kind of very disappointing. So finding ways to cut the immense amount of money that we spend as a government, and you'll always find people in government willing to spend other people's money and complain that the reason that the problem isn't resolved is because, well, we didn't have enough money. If we only had more of your money, then we could fix these problems. And as I've already indicated, there doesn't seem to be any evidence whatsoever that the government solves really any problems, regardless of how much money you throw at them. And I think that a lot of the fraud, the waste, particularly the waste, maybe the abuse, has been directed towards keeping people employed in government who are currently out of one party's administration and funneling that money into causes and keeping people employed or keeping people wealthy or whatever it happens to be on the taxpayer's dime. And I can't stand any of that. I like a very lean, mean government machine that has very little overreach. And I'm hopeful that the only way that we are going to reduce this $30-some trillion debt that we have as a nation is by reducing our spending. We have got to spend less, significantly less, and that is very hard to do. I think, obviously, as a person if you're elected to office, you want to maintain your job and keep your career going, whatever you think that happens to be. I think it should be a temp job at best. Like, you're just there temporarily for a term or two, and then you go back and be useful in another way. You've been useful by serving the public, hopefully in an administratively conservative way. But that's not how it's been. I mean, people stay in office for 1,000,000 years. They get old. They die there. They hold on to their office forever, and that's a different conversation for a different time. We do have term limits. You get your butt out there and you vote, and you put the hammer down on your political party, whether it's Democrat, Republican, whatever. There's like like one libertarian, you put the hammer on your own parties, and you take a look at those party leaders who do a lot of the work to maintain the axis of their own power, and you say, no, we want somebody new. Like, your job is to go vet somebody and provide us another option in our own party, which I assume that if you're in a party, you're aligned with the values of that party. So don't keep the same people. They don't need to be there for a long time. Like, that should be, I would love to see any party actively primary their own people on a regular basis. And I mean, that might seem crazy, but it seems like a good way to do it, because the truth of the matter is, in my opinion, none of these jobs are particularly difficult in the sense that, they require just the most special people in the world. And I'll use, here in Iowa, for example, our own Senator Chuck Grassley's been in office since, I think, Christ was a corporal, and he's 930 years old right now. He's never missed a vote, so he's got integrity in that regard. I appreciate that, and he's never really sought any higher office, but he's been there for so long, it leads one to believe, and the Republicans in the state of Iowa, for example, have apparently agreed with him, that the only person in the world who could possibly do that job is one Charles Grassley. And clearly that's not the case. We should be rotating our politicians regularly. I think the old what is the old phrase that politicians are like diapers? They should be changed regularly and for the same reason. And so I think that is something that hopefully will happen. So when those people get out of power, then they seem to find these other jobs in government or in agencies, or agencies then funnel money to other organizations that then turn around and then they apply some of that money to their lobbying, which goes back to the same people that are in elected office, and it's just one big vicious cycle. I would like to see tremendous corrections in that. I'd like to see our budgets cut across the board tremendously, and of course that leads to a lot of screaming and beneficiaries crying and all of that stuff. But the government's job is really quite simple and spelled out in the Constitution. It's really not meant to be as complicated as it is. And so my hope is we can reduce that fraud, we can reduce that race, we can abuse, reduce the problems with our spending and never seeming to want to stop spending. Otherwise, we're going to just continue down this path of barrier. So hopefully all this results in that. Hopefully people change offices regularly. Hopefully the money doesn't go back into bureaucratic cycles that just continue to feed the same parties and all of that stuff. And then hopefully we can get our taxes reduced. That's probably not going to happen necessarily across the board for a long time. They do need a lot of money, and I don't believe that Trump is going to not spend money. Like, he's going to spend money. And Republicans are absolutely enamored with the idea of peace through strength, which is a good phrase, and I don't entirely disagree with that. But there are much more efficient ways even to run the Department of Defense. And yet we spend a lot of money on defense. And so I appreciate what Trump is trying to do. I just don't think tariffs are the way to do it. Because at the end of the day, again, getting back to Thomas Sowell, I would say this: tariffs, as he says, are really just taxes on you and me, the consumer.
Now, tariffs are essentially taxes on imports, and they're meant to protect domestic industries by making foreign goods more expensive. But here we see something quite different. Tariffs are being used as a tool for broader geopolitical strategy.
It's hard to argue with a guy like Thomas Sowell, and I will tell you that we're going to use his some cuts from Thomas Sowell throughout the broadcast today. What they do is they just end up being a tax on you and me, which raises the price on everything. And there are many, many examples we'll get into today. But anytime that you force someone else to pay additional funds to say like this, it's not necessarily like the foreign companies, over in China. Or Mexico or wherever that are necessarily paying. It's the people that are in this country that are businesses that are selling those products that then have to pay the U.S. government those tariffs on those products that are imported from those other countries. They don't just eat that. that gets passed on to you and to me in a variety of ways. It leads to higher prices.
Tariffs often lead to higher prices for consumers. When you slap a 25% tariff on goods from Mexico and Canada and then add a 10% on Canadian energy, you're not just affecting the price of steel or aluminum, you're influencing the cost of everything these nations export to us.
You know, there are lots of examples throughout history that when we've tried this before, it's not like this isn't a new idea. In fact, he frequently goes back to talking about William McKinley and the McKinley administration and how they used tariffs as a way to really ramp up funding for the United States. Now, this was before we had an income tax and things got wildly out of hand. So at that time in the economy, when the nation was, 120 years old, they did feel that they needed to, raise tariffs. And in some ways it was successful, but not in the same way that we're looking at today. Also, the economy of the United States was, as a consumer economy, not anywhere remotely near where we are today. And so the effects of importing and then placing tariffs on just a vast number of imports ultimately is going to result, according to Thomas Sowell, history would prove that trade wars, which is essentially what we're entering into with the entire world for some reason, they do not end well typically. And actually, they frequently lead to unemployment. That's a problem.
Trade wars rarely end well for anyone involved. The Smoot-Hawley tariff of $1,930 is a prime example of how tariffs contributed to the economic downturn of the Great Depression by reducing global trade volumes. Unemployment surged not because of the stock market crash, but because of these trade barriers.
So talking about unemployment, one of the examples that Thomas Sowell regularly uses is the Smoot-Hawley legislation. And Smoot-Hawley was legislation that came out after the 1929, failure of the stock market that led into the Great Depression. And that legislation under President Hoover attempted to correct the stock market crash of 1929, particularly dealing with unemployment. And these tariffs were intended to, and this legislation overall was intended to correct what had failed that led us to the Depression in the 30s. The problem was that, in retrospect, unemployment was in single digits following the stock market crash in 1929. And it wasn't until Smoot-Hawley legislation came into effect, when the government came in to help things out, that it was actually, that's when it got moved into that's when unemployment moved into double digits. Legislation caused unemployment to surge and stay in the double digits throughout the 30s. What that did is obviously it set us on a cycle of any number of things, including a lot of the things that we have today because of the Roosevelt administration, who were pretty easily able to come swoop in following Hoover's administration, blame everything on Hoover, and then not leave, for 4 terms. Which in that process we had all kinds of what I would call socialist programming, including Social Security, which was supposed to be Social Security insurance. We had our public works projects, the CCC, all of these different things that were intended. And so government kept throwing money into, this is prior to World War II, into programs that were intended to correct our economic situation that, in many ways, they actually created.
In October 1929, the stock market crashed. 2 months later, unemployment peaked at 9%. Over the next several months, the unemployment began to subside irregularly, down to 6.3% by June of 1930. So 8 months after the stock market crash, we have not yet hit double digits in unemployment. June 1930, when it's 6.3%, The government intervenes first, the first real intervention on a massive scale under Hoover, the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. And within 5 months after the bill was passed, we had double-digit unemployment for the first time. This is from a bill designed to lower unemployment. Right. And when it hit, and this time it did not subside. It never fell below double digits for the entire remainder of the decade of the 30s, not even for a single month.
Anytime government gets involved in the economy, so now you have people that are in elected positions, and they're obviously geniuses when it comes to the economy, which is why they go into government service, because they are, I'll give, Trump some credit here. I mean, obviously he is a businessman and a real estate developer, and he's a bit of a unicorn in that regard compared to what we've had as presidents in the past, and certainly as legislators. So you wonder where these business geniuses come from that are in the halls of Congress. And then, well, think about the business geniuses in the military and the business geniuses that are in the bureaucracy across the board. They obviously all understand business so well that they decided to not be in the private sector, but to take their business acumen and apply it in the government. And it just causes more problems every time that the government tries to get involved and correct economic situations. It just makes it worse, which is why Thomas Sowell once again says tariffs simply just raise the costs of goods that you and I buy, and whether it's directly or indirectly, tariffs are a tax.
For the American people, these tariffs mean higher prices.
So I would say I'm generally just not a big fan of taxes. I mean, maybe you enjoy paying taxes, and everybody, depending on who you ask, we all kind of like, yeah, I guess we have to pay for this, and we do have, we have to have, it does. I get it. But there are creative other solutions. Maybe that's for another broadcast. That's when the libertarian in me. Fiscally, I'm a libertarian for sure, very much so. Not on the other stuff, but this is something that we can talk about maybe in another episode about maybe how to do some of those things. But according to the Wall Street Journal had some information that they were talking about these exact same things with the tariffs and how they actually hurt us. That they hurt you and I, the consumer. We're buying the stuff, and it's just raising our prices. So that ends up feeling not just like a tax, but it feels a little bit like an income tax to some degree, right? Because even if you have to spend more money on the outlay of products that you need to buy because the government is thinking that it's correcting a problem in a nation far, far away to teach them a lesson, and we're going to make things equal, all it really does is push it down to you and I and to our checkbooks. And the Wall Street Journal brings this up. And they also say, which I find interesting, it protects certain industries. See, tariffs just protect certain industries. They don't protect every industry. And there are downstream effects because one industry relies on another industry in the supply chain. So there are all kinds of issues that come up with just levying tariffs as we see fit to teach one country a lesson. And then, what happens after that? The problem is that the certain industries that tariffs typically protect are usually the ones that have the loudest lobbyists.
It's kind of a perfect example of what tariffs do. Hurt consumers while protecting very specific industries, or attempt to get countries to change their behavior.
So I'll give you an example. Back in 2018, President Trump, in his first administration, levied tariffs on washing machines. I don't know why. I guess he was trying to teach a lesson to Asia or whatever he was doing. He was going to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. And so for whatever reason, decided to levy tariffs on washing machines. But that only raised the prices across the board, including the downstream prices on dryers, which the Wall Street Journal will explain here in this cut.
Let's start in 2018 when President Trump put tariffs on
washing machines. We're going to benefit our consumers, and we're going to create a lot of jobs.
Since then, whenever a washing machine is imported to the U.S., the company on the U.S. side doing the importing pays a tariff to the U.S. government.
Their margins are pretty low. They've got to pass that price on to consumers who ultimately pay it. That's the whole point, in some sense, to reduce demand for those goods and create space for domestic producers.
After the tariffs, not only did the price of imported washing machines go up, so did the ones made in the U.S.
There's this myth out there that if we tax imports, domestic producers won't change their prices. And that's not the case. You're creating more demand for them.
So naturally, the price goes up. And it wasn't just washers. Dryers went up in price too, even though they weren't part of the tariffs.
So usually it's the case, if you buy a washer, you buy a dryer. So even though dryers weren't directly affected by the tariff, they were indirectly affected by the shift in demand.
I think it's interesting that when you, and this is something that they don't really, you don't really hear much discussed, at least I haven't. It isn't just that it's going to raise the prices, tariffs raise the prices on imported goods, right? It protects those industries, those niche industries that have these loud lobbyists. And they then, because they're, like they just explained, they're either experiencing a greater demand for their product, they then raise their product price. And so the tariffs are meant to protect an industry, and they do, right? And then those industries, because of demand, raise their prices on par with what it would be for the imported stuff. And so there's not even a guarantee that the domestic products are even as good or better. There's no guarantee of. They could actually be worse, and they could be in parity with the prices for imported goods that potentially in the same industry are better, that they would then have to compete with. I find the whole concept of tariffs is so infuriating to me because it just doesn't fix anything. But it does raise the prices across the board, not just on the things like, I'm not just going to buy a Samsung, I'm going to go and buy a Maytag. Well, Maytag's raising their prices, and they're on parity, and we don't even know if it's as good as a Samsung. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that it doesn't save anybody any money, and that's supposed to create jobs. But again, that doesn't necessarily even happen either. And as exemplified in this last cut, it raised the prices downstream because people buy dryers because they want them to match their new washing machine. So then they probably going to get the same brand. So now you're going to buy a dryer as well. Well, their prices of dryers are going to go up. Well, there's not a tariff on dryers, but I don't know why there wasn't one on dryers, but there wasn't one. And so then that raised the prices of dryers because then people would get a set and they'd dry, and then there would be fewer dryers. So that, demand would expect us to raise the prices. And so we ended up paying more for washers and dryers across the board. Good job, government. That's an example. And does it ultimately lead to more jobs and production in the United States? Well, LG and Samsung did build plants in the United States, and so they do manufacture those things in the United States. But did it bring down the price? No. You would think competition would do that, but why would you need to if the tariffs still remain for all of whatever other companies are out there making these things that are not in the U.S., right? So there's a new false floor where we all start, and that's where we have to pay. And it was because it was initiated by government overreach using tariffs. So again, in Thomas Sowell comes back pretty clearly explaining why tariffs raise prices for consumers and manufacturers.
I've discussed how tariffs distort market efficiency. They raise the cost of goods, which impacts everyone from the individual consumer to large corporations that rely on these imports for production. This isn't making America great again, it's making life more expensive for America.
The idea in the economy, as I understand it, like I said, I'm not an economist, but I've done some reading. I think that I trust the competition and the principles inherent in free trade. And so if you've got a product and you're from China and I've got a product here in Iowa and we're competing and we're making the product. Now, there are multiple inputs for that, right? So I mean, whether how I'm building whatever materials that I'm using, I've got a labor cost, I've got other costs that again the government can get involved in all those types of things with regulation and how your factory has to be set up and what type of ladders you have to have and whether you have to have like a little harness when you go up on, there's like all kinds of things like that. But maybe those other countries don't have those type of regulations. So maybe they don't pay their people very well. And if you're a communist government like China is, I can see how they could get away with practical slavery. So these other countries they do have an advantage over us in labor, and that was certainly the situation at the auto industry, right? These tariffs, particularly now for vehicles for auto manufacturing, that is just clearly a big gift to the unions for the like UAW and stuff, right? Because they're making vehicles in the United States. They're getting paid $50 an hour or whatever they get paid, getting their union breaks and all that stuff, so that you can buy your Ford pickup truck for $70,000 or whatever a brand new truck costs, because that's what a vehicle costs. Your vehicle costs that much, you know what I mean? So it's labor does cost a lot, and so why in the United States particularly, and certainly in Europe. I mean, talk about a labor union hotspot. That is certainly the case over there. So we put these tariffs on everything, and it makes everything more expensive, and it doesn't necessarily increase manufacturing jobs in the United States. There's not a competition for there's not true competition. Like if I make a better product and I charge more for the better product, then you're going to pay it because that's what you want. I think Apple is a good example of that. I think that the iPhone is superior to most of the other iPhones that are out there, right? Or not the other iPhones, the other cell phones that are out there. Not everybody agrees with that, but I do like Apple products. I feel like they are superior in myriad ways. So you pay more for that. And there's a value to that. If you have a product that is just better made and has a better story, perhaps, maybe better marketing, maybe a better package, maybe, I don't know. But there's all kinds of factors that go into it. And it seems to me like if you are competing, you are constantly trying to have the edge over your competition. And I realize that there are some things, obviously, that, my better product that goes to another country truly is a better product, and they may slap tariffs on me because they're mad and they're trying to protect their own industry, and then it's just back and forth. Some people are still going to buy, right? I don't understand how these tariffs are going to fix anything. As Thomas Sowell says, at the end of the day, it just undermines free trade principles.
Looking into the future, these tariffs could set a precedent for using economic policy as leverage in non-economic disputes, which is troubling. It undermines the principle of free trade that has been a cornerstone of economic growth globally.
I'm going to jump back to something here, and we use the Wall Street Journal to back this up a little bit. I mentioned that when Trump put these tariffs on washing machines, that we did see, like Samsung and LG did bring in manufacturing to the United States, and so those two companies were primarily the reason that there was an increase in manufacturing jobs, particularly related to the whole washing machine. So that's credited as a victory. See, we did it. Except it cost the consumers a tremendous amount of money. And when you divide that by the number of new jobs created, which weren't that many, you find out that the cost per job is exorbitant on the taxpayer's dime. Is that really what we wanted? Listen to this from the Wall Street Journal.
And a study found the U.S. collected $82 million annually. But because of those price increases, it cost consumers $1.5 billion more. So they basically paid $815,000 per job.
I'll take it another step. Despite government intervention, that are going to make everything well, we're going to fix everything. It's going to work great. If you believe that, there's a lot of bridges we could sell you from the government, right? And at an exorbitant rate. Businesses are in the business of making money. That's what businesses are for. They're there to make money. And the result of making that money is that people have jobs, they get paid a little bit more, we have a higher quality of life, blah, blah, blah. They give to the communities around them, everything is better, right? When we have true free trade and we have these good competitive processes, the businesses know how to make more money. They know how to cut their costs. They know how to improve, how to compete, and the good ones can reduce those costs and become more efficient. In other words, they can find businesses that's actually their job. It's not like their part-time job and then the other time that they're a bureaucrat. Like the bureaucrats think that their part-time job is explaining how business works. It's the business's job to be more efficient with their business. And that means that they can be way more efficient in developing or increasing manufacturing jobs, for example, in the United States. Way more efficient than just government slapping tariffs across the board.
They're much more cost-effective, more efficient ways of increasing employment in those industries.
And speaking of efficiency, I think it's fair to say, in many cases, I kind of brought this up a little bit earlier, many of these tariffs that are placed on products to protect certain industries in the United States or any other country for that matter, they're there to protect industries. What if they're not the most efficient industries? Like, what if they suck at their product? What if they're just not good at it? Or what if they're not the most efficient? What if there's a better way to do it? What if they are not keeping time with the rest of their industry across the world? But we're going to protect them. And then does that make them more efficient? Are they better off because now they're protected? Or are we just protecting the least efficient industries in our own country so that they don't have to change, develop, improve, or focus on the business problems that are inherent to their own industry? I think that's what Thomas Sowell was saying. In many ways, tariffs, they simply protect those industries who are not efficient. And this causes long-term market issues. It's all based on a false precept. Here's Thomas Sowell.
Such policies often stem from a vision that sees government intervention as a solution to all problems, ignoring the trade-offs and unintended consequences. The long-term effect on the American people might be less choice, reduced competition, and stifled innovation. Tariffs protect inefficient industries, which can lead to complacency, rather than encouraging them to compete globally. This isn't just about short-term job preservation, it's about the long-term health of our economy, which thrives on competition and innovation.
So, following the Trump washing machine tariffs, that's a thing. He then went on to place tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum, which China... He's gonna. If you remember this back after 2018, after the washing machine tariffs, Trump administration had tariffs placed on steel and aluminum, but that did nothing to provide advantages to. It did nothing to provide advantages to our domestic production because steel and aluminum are just in about everything. And all it did is make those prices cheaper for our world competitors, and China was more than happy to deal with them. So it raised our prices, and it gave an advantage to our global competitors, just like the Wall Street Journal has to say.
All the industries that use steel and have to pay the higher price, that squeezes their profit margins, and it also puts them at a competitive disadvantage against foreign producers of those same goods who don't have to pay those inflated costs for their inputs. And so a lot of studies have shown that you lose jobs, as many, if not more jobs, in those downstream industries as you gain in the upstream industries that are being protected by the tariffs.
So Donald Trump definitely believes, and to some effect, I mean, he's had some success, particularly with nations of, smaller GDP than maybe some of our other competitors in the world. But Trump believes he can just hammer on nations like Canada and the EU, for example, or of course China, and we can just punch him into being more fair in world trade. And we're going to use tariffs to do that. And in some ways, like I said, he does bring jobs back to the United States with these tariffs. Companies do come back, and they do, if there's a benefit to them, manufacturing here in the United States, then so that seems good. It also causes our competitors around the world, though, so like China, to be even more aggressive with their tariff program and their economic policy. So it's a chicken fight. And look, if there's one thing Donald Trump loves besides trolling whoever he has on his brain at that moment, he really does appreciate a good chicken fight.
Many studies on the 2018 tariffs found some pros, some cons. Manufacturing jobs, which were on the decline, didn't increase, but they did level out. the overall economy lost jobs, mostly in those downstream industries, and the costs of the tariffs were passed on to U.S. companies and consumers. So, not great for the economy, but it did motivate U.S. companies to move out of China and made supply chains more resilient. But it didn't change much of China's behavior, and in many ways, they became more aggressive.
So speaking of chickens, and this is kind of what that Wall Street Journal thing that I'm using in today's cuts comes from, there was such a thing as a chicken war following World War II. So if you have tariffs in place, they turn out to be very difficult to remove. Back in the early 50s, so following World War II, Germany, which was on the recovery, the Marshall Plan was rebuilding. They ate a lot of chicken, and the United States sold them a lot of chicken, like 50 million, lots of chickens to Germany. And then Germany decided that what would become the EU, Europe said, well, the European farmers didn't like that the United States was selling Germany so many chickens. And so they put a tariff on American chickens. And that caused a problem. So then the United States said, well, here's what we're going to do to you. We are going to put a tariff on your European trucks, Germany particularly. So the Volkswagen, and that never recovered. That never changed. Those tariffs are still in place. And guess what? Who cares who's buying chickens? Like, that fell apart fairly quickly. It didn't change a darn thing. But we did keep those tariffs in place on trucks from Europe. And what that actually did is it resulted in higher prices for the United States, less competition and choice in a variety of ways, not necessarily better products from American manufacturers, particularly in the automotive industry. And they didn't go anywhere. They didn't disappear. They're still out there. We're still doing the chicken thing regarding truck taxes on European vehicles. And I guess that's supposed to result in a reduction of income taxes. But again, if tariffs truly result in an income tax reduction, but at the end of the day, we're paying way more in our consumer goods, that it outdoes what we saved on our income taxes, then did we really accomplish anything per household?
So we're still living with the legacy of the chicken war. So that's sort of another lesson of history, is you have to be careful about imposing these tariffs, because you think you're doing it for short-term strategic reasons, or you're just helping out this industry temporarily, but they can last for decade upon decade upon decade.
And again, these countries that are out there that we're dealing with and enjoying our time dealing with them, walking around, pulling our hands on our belts, like, yep, throwing our shoulders back. We are America. Look, I'm proud of what we can accomplish. And I happen to believe that Americans are innovators. And when it comes to business, there's just nobody better than we are. That's why China steals all our ideas. We're very good innovators. We can, business-wise, find our way out of this without having false subsidies, essentially created by protective tariffs that aren't going to do anything for anybody, except you and I are going to pay more money for just about everything. I mean, maybe there is a benefit to threatening smaller economies, like I've already mentioned, nations that have smaller GDPs. We want them to do our bidding, and by golly, maybe that works. But that likely isn't going to be the case with economies that are closer to our scale. And again, it's just going to cost you and me a whole lot more.
Multiple independent studies looked at the possible effects. One found it would cost the average American household $1,700 from higher prices. Another found it could cost more than 684,000 jobs. And they don't factor in how domestic goods might get more expensive, or retaliatory tariffs from other countries.
They're not going to take this lying down. They're not going to change their behavior in some way to appease the administration that imposes such tariffs. They're going to retaliate. So not only will U.S. imports shrink, but U.S. exports will shrink as well.
So I don't like tariffs. I don't like taxes. Taxes and tariffs, to me, are the same thing. It's just a sneakier way of doing it. The government will collect money from tariffs. They will say, look, all this money, and we're making these nations pay through their manufacturers. Of course, it's really that those nations are paying. It's the importing industries in the United States that are selling those to you and I, those products to you and I. They're the ones here in the United States, the domestic companies that are buying those products because they need them in their manufacturing or whatever it happens to be. They're the ones that are paying the United States government that. And then that's passed along, once again, to you and I. And we end up paying more for our products. And that doesn't make things cheaper. It doesn't make things better. It doesn't make things more competitive. It doesn't make things more efficient. Tariffs are not a good idea. It's a dead idea. Just like William McKinley, who, by the way, he was assassinated. Like that. Like there's a thing. Like, why would you want to be, in that particular case, like emulate William McKinley's plans for the government, which predated. Now, if you get rid of this, hey, look, if you get rid of the entire income tax thing, that $5 trillion that comes, into the United States Treasury, just get rid of the income tax. Okay, now we're talking. I don't know how it's still going to be a tax out there, folks. Your products are still going to go up. And will it balance out? That is the question. And as Thomas Sowell says, the cost of these new tariffs, I guess, these trade wars, well, they may likely outweigh the perceived short-term benefits that Donald Trump has in mind.
It's important to consider not just the immediate political gain, but the lasting economic impact. We need policies that foster growth, not ones that might temporarily shield certain sectors at the cost of the broader economies. This approach, as I've often pointed out, requires us to ask, compared to what and at what cost? And in this case, the costs might outweigh the perceived benefits significantly.
All right, well, that's about 40 minutes of trade talk and stuff that I'm not an expert in, and I just I'm tired of the tariff idea. I think it's a bad idea. If the economy isn't good under Trump in the next year, and despite what he's trolling, I don't know why he does this. He's trolling people saying, I could run for a third term. There are ways around it. I was like, I think he's just trolling people, getting people all fired up. Obviously, he better not. He better not try that nonsense. But I think he just likes getting under people's skin, and I think that's what that whole FDR, like, I'm going to run forever situation is. But there, he's going to. The conversation about tariffs and being a solution. I don't believe it's, when you take money out of my pocket and you're the government, I don't like it. Whether it's through income tax or this tax or property tax or that tax or tariffs, which ends up being a hidden tax on everything that we buy. I don't like it. And you shouldn't like it either, but I won't tell you what to think. Except in this case, I will tell you a little bit about what this happened last week. I'm going to end on this because, look, if I like sugar, you like sugar. Sugar is basically crack cocaine, I think, for most Americans. And clearly we have a sugar problem. We love our sugar. Grains are sugar. And so besides our upside down food pyramid, which came place sometime in the Eisenhower administration for some reason, we have an addiction to sugar. And we like sweet things. We do. Sweet thing? That sounds like a Big Bopper song. You sweet thing. We love it. We love our tea. We love our soda. We love our food. Everything's got to have sugar in it. And a spoonful of sugar does make the medicine go down. And so there's sugar in just about everything. And of course, one of the things that is happening with the MAHA movement, the Make America Healthy Again movement, with RFK Jr., is the idea that we're going to prohibit the purchase of sugary beverages from SNAP benefits. Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program or something like that. SNAP is commonly when I was growing up, we call them food stamps. And I think like 1 out of 8 people in the United States have SNAP benefits. It's an enormous program. It's gajillions of dollars. And that's all administered through the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Seems like it's the right place for SNAP benefits to come from. And what they are saying is that they should prevent people with SNAP benefits from being able to use those SNAP benefits to buy sugary drinks, essentially, and that's a problem. Junk food, and there's no need for it. There's a want. There's a difference between a need and a want. And SNAP and any of our welfare programs are meant to address actual needs, not wants. We understand that we want to take care of our neighbor. We want to help people, give them a hand, helping hand up, so that they can continue and to get on their feet and to pay it forward. And it's not supposed to be an eternal benefit, but it seems like America enjoys that eternal benefit situation. And for some reason, I got a text this past week that really kind of it really irritated me. And what it was I got a text. I don't even know why, and it was from the Americans for Food and Beverage Choice. Oh, it's about choice for food, and we're Americans, and we're for food and beverage choice. And it says things that, based on what I've talked about all day, you would think that I'm for, like say no to government overreach. Yeah, that sounds like, yes, I'm with you there. Protect your freedom to decide what's right for your family. Yeah, I should have the right to decide what's right for my family. But the Americans for Food and Beverage Choice, what they really are is if you visit their website, is a group of sugar producers. And what they're saying is we believe we can make a difference for every family and every community if we just work together to preserve our freedom to choose, this is funny, healthy, sustainable, and affordable grocery items that our families rely on, like Dr. Pepper. I like Dr. Pepper. I do. And my family likes Dr. Pepper. But we don't have SNAP benefits. But if we did, we could still buy Dr. Pepper. We wouldn't be prevented from going down the aisle and purchasing all kinds of sweetened drinks that our body doesn't need. If we wanted to do that, we could. But we just couldn't use our SNAP benefits to do it. The partners of this fine group that sent me their text for some reason is the American Beverage Group and the American Bakers Association. I like baking. Baking usually requires sugar and eggs. And the Corn Refiners Association. Listen, this is corn country. And the corn refiners turn that corn into a pure form of sugar, which is then added to everything you eat, and you get fat. So then there's also the FMI, which that would be, I think, the voice of food retail. So the grocers want to keep selling that crap to people, and they want the government, you and I, with our tax dollars through SNAP benefits via the USDA to be able to continue to buy things from their grocery store that they, health-wise, RFK Jr. would say, you don't really need that. Consumer Brands Association is into this. The National Confectioners Association. Yeah, candy makers, obviously. Got to have your candy. And the National Grocers Association, as well as this is the best one, the Sugar Association. The Sugar Association. I mean, that's a sweet place to work, I'll tell you that. All of these places. Look, I appreciate the fact that they have a product and they want to sell it. I do not appreciate the fact that they want to have this and try to convince us that this is a healthy and sustainable grocery item for American families who are really, across the board, Americans are suffering from obesity. And obesity is driven by, how do you make pigs fat? How do you make animals fat? How do you get those cows to get that marbled looking, in their marbled fat in their muscle so that they make delicious steaks? Well, you feed them sugar. And that's through grains. Around here, it's corn, but it can be whatever. That's what grains do. They make you fat. And if you have too much of it, you get even fatter. And that leads to health problems. It leads to health problems that we are paying for in other ways as a nation, which raises your insurance costs as across the board, more than they already have since 2012, right? So this whole idea that we have to support the sugar industry, the sweetener industry, by allowing our folks to go through the aisles and use their SNAP benefits to purchase junk food and soda is asinine. And there are some people who claim to be conservative, I guess, and they are clearly bought and paid for because they are tying it to or trying to spin it so that it has something to do with choice. The choice is still there, my friends, but in the same way that a SNAP beneficiary cannot buy booze or cigarettes with their SNAP benefits, that's clearly a want. not a need, even though those can be addictive, just maybe more addictive. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's less addictive than sugar. You can't buy, alcohol and tobacco with SNAP benefits. So why would you be able to buy soda? And a weaker person might say because they're people too, then they deserve to have, their RC Cola. Well, whether somebody deserves an RC or what is really irrelevant. It's more of, we are investing in our population to help them up. And that investment is not a good investment when we're just buying a lot of junk. And it's not making them healthier. And it isn't making them thinner. And the result is more problems for us down the road with health. And that is the concern of RFK. And I happen to agree with him 100% that SNAP benefits just don't need to be a part of purchasing junk, right? Like soda. I love soda. But I don't expect you to buy that for me. And so they can't buy. You also can't buy pet foods. You can't buy cleaning supplies. People need to keep their houses clean. The SNAP benefits don't do that. You don't buy paper products, other household supplies. You can't buy cosmetics. You can't buy hygiene items. You can buy fruits and vegetables, meat, poultry, fish, dairy products, breads. You can still buy cereals and breads. It's still out there, my little baker association, and other foods. Like snack foods and non-alcoholic beverages are currently on there, according to the SNAP website from the U.S. government. That's the part that they're looking to strike. Other foods such as snack foods and non-alcoholic beverages. We're talking about soda pop. But you can buy seeds and plants which produce foods. You could actually plant stuff and make your own garden. You also can't, I thought this is interesting, because I've heard other commentators who agree with me on the fact that you shouldn't have SNAP benefits paying for these things. They also, but they're saying, I don't want you to go and buy, Burger King, for example. Well, you can't. Foods that are hot at the point of sale, SNAP benefits cannot be used for those. So that's, somebody didn't do their research there. You can't buy those types. You can't buy live animals either. You can't buy those chickens that I did to make eggs. You can buy seeds to make plants that grow food, but you can't buy you can buy animals like shellfish, fish that just came from the water, and then animals that are slaughtered prior to pickup from the store. So I guess you could buy them from your locker if you wanted to. So fresh food, that's allowed. That's good. That's good for you. And the rest of it is just, probably don't need that. But you might want it. And if you want it, well, then you can buy it on your own dime. That's what RFK is saying, and that's what I am saying. So that's what we're saying here at the sunny side of life. Look, I don't know what it takes to. It's difficult to get away from delicious sugary foods and with that craving that we have for carbohydrates. And in the same way that I'm not an economist, I'm not a dietitian, I know what I like to eat, and I know that I shouldn't eat all of the things that I do eat, and I shouldn't drink all of the things that I do drink. That's for sure. But I don't expect anybody to pay for it for me. So with that in mind, I don't know, maybe make yourself a nice hot dish. Or if you really want to, I guess you could take your own money, and when you go to the grocery store, you could buy a bunch of soda and a bunch of candy and a bunch of, snack foods and chips, and you could just give it to a person in need on your own dime. And that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Maybe that's how you could be the sunny side of someone else's life.
When the shadows fall and doubts begin to creep, remember together we're strong, never weak. Lift your neighbor up with kindness every day. Let your actions speak the words you want to say.
The Sunny Side of Life is a weekly production about our life on the family farmstead here in Iowa, the liberties we prize, and the pursuits which make us happy. None of this is possible, of course, without Christ in our lives. For the Lord God is our sun and our shield. He gives us grace and glory.
Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life. Be the sunny side of someone else's life. Share your light and joy through struggle and strife. Keep your heart open and your soul always bright. Together we will share this sunny side life.
May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may the sunny side of your life in Christ be made evident unto you each and every day, and give you peace.